right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun. And today we are back. Yes, once again, talking comics because it's a nice little comforting blanket that I like to wrap myself up in. It's just comfortable and easy to talk about. And today, God, we're starting out already like this. But today we are talking about Ultimate Spider-Man #1. And if you are liking what we have been doing on this channel now or in the past or whatever, if you've forgotten to hit that subscribe button, don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell and share and blah 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 freaking blah. Okay, who else wants a Ridge wallet too? And by the way, there won't be any ads in the middle of this. You get you get a whole video like without any breaks in it for somebody to talk about like some product they're hawking. So, there's that. If you like one thing in this, it's that I'm not trying to sell you something, except for my love for Ultimate Spider-Man #1 and my real interest in this new Ultimate universe. I wasn't collecting comics back when the Ultimate universe got started way back in the early 2000s, like, right? Was that like 90? I don't even know when that actually started. I don't even I've only read like the trades. I don't have any of the individual issues really from back then, except for Ultimate Fantastic Four. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm like excited about all this because I actually did read Ultimate Fantastic Four. um, And I find that funny because I wasn't always like a Fantastic Four fan. It took a long time. It took years and years of reading comics for me to finally go back and start looking at some of the Fantastic Four. And it was more recent Fantastic Four that got me into looking back into more into the John Byrne era and stuff that really picked that up. But that's neither here nor there. But this is my channel. This is how it goes. We start talking about one thing and we end up talking about a lot of things, and that's kind of my thing. And so if you just want to hear a regular guy who likes comics talk about some comic world stuff, well, then you've found the right place. So anyway, yes, in order to talk about all of this, we have to talk about a whole bunch of other books that came before Ultimate Spider-Man because I didn't even know it was coming out. Full disclosure, like I've said in previous videos, uh, in 20 by somewhere in 2022, I basically stopped like late 2022. My life kind of got shaken. My life's been shaking up for a while, actually, but around then, I stopped reading, and became more about just collecting. I would still get the books, but I wasn't reading anything, and so I have like this backlog of like a year's worth of books to read. And one of the books that was coming out that I was getting was Ultimate Invasion. And when I was getting it, I saw it was Hickman. I knew it was Hickman that was doing it. That was it. I saw, the covers to the books, and I've got them like kind of like it here right now. I'm looking at them. Um, for well, not just for this video, but because I was just reading them and all that for the first time. And I liked when in issue #1 it had the Maker on the cover. And the Maker is, if you can't tell by my little avatar here, is has been one of my favorite characters from the that I since I've been back reading comics, that I started reading again back in 2016, which led me down lots of rabbit holes where I've been catching up with a lot of stuff that I missed from not reading all those years. And in all of that, one of the characters that rose to the top for me was Maker. Uh, because I was finally getting into the Fantastic Four and some of the conversations along the lines of when we talk about Reed Richards, there would always be people that would talk to me about what a horrible dude he actually is, or what they think of him. And I think that that's everybody's, you read a character in your own perspective and things that kind of happen to you or whatever that character reminds you of or doesn't remind you of can make you like lead you down things to make you think the character is this or that. Um, but I really liked the idea of like, what if Reed Richards was bad? A lot of these characters could be interesting like that. But Reed Richards is like basically, what if he became Doctor Doom? and 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 in Ultimate Invasion, like we have like and there's spoilers for all of this. So if you don't want anything spoiled, but for Ultimate Invasion, Ultimate Universe, or any of the Ultimate books, uh, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Just either click off or enjoy the video. Um, good night. All right. So I really love the idea of Maker, the evil Reed Richards, who uh in this book, I mean, Maker even has like a Reed Richards wearing a Doctor Doom mask, as if one of the things I like about some stories is like without Batman, there's always there's the Batman and the Joker. You got Kingpin and Daredevil. Superman, Lex Luthor, and with Reed Richards, it's always gonna be Doctor Doom. All these guys have other people they fight, but like there's usually one main kind of nemesis. And Doom and Reed are just kind of, in my opinion, like two sides of, two very similar people. A lot of these characters can be like, they've been able to make versions of them over the course of the years of characters that are similar to them, like, the Batman who laughs, like that kind of thing. But Maker, he comes from the Ultimate Universe. He was Ultimate Fantastic Four's Reed Richards. And he's this guy who just by the end of the book becomes this other version. And I just love that we have this whole book that shows like the creation of this character, this like downfall of like somebody really, really great to become something completely, twisted. And it makes me think a little bit of like if we had gotten like the full story of like say a Darth Vader or something, like seeing Anakin. We've over the course of the past 20 years, if you pay attention and you look at it chronologically, we've seen the rise and fall of Darth Vader, and I kind of love that whole journey we've gotten for that character, even in its ups and downs. And in that book, that's kind of what this reminds me of. And so all these years later, here's Maker. I mean, he's been around for a long time now, but used kind of, I love how they've kind of sparingly used him, for the most part. Like, he was on Venom, he's in Little Things. He's got an arc kind of always going on, but like I like how he's kind of, to me, shadowy still, like, or at least in my comics that I read, he doesn't just show up everywhere. Um, but at the end of the Ultimate Universe in Secret Wars, where there was a whole nother like Doom, Ultimate Doom, kind of like Fantastic Four story where all the multiverses, like there's so much that we could talk about here. I could talk about this story probably if we went into all the details about it, we'd be talking for freaking ever. And as much as I would love to do that, I'd like to keep this video somewhat short. And I'm already talked for 8 minutes and 45 seconds as my counter is telling me. So after the end of the Ultimate Universe at Secret Wars, you basically just have two people that made it out. Freaking Maker, who is Ultimate Reed Richards, and Miles Morales, who is Spider-Man in I don't know what I'm talking about. His Spider-Man, his universe's Spider-Man he's now here in this world, and he's been here for a good long while. And so all this background, right? And all the ways that like Maker's been working behind the scenes. He's been doing other things, books that I haven't even read. Still, I have Maker stuff to actually catch up on still. Because again, like I said, this character came out before I started reading comics again. But for me, when I was reading him in Venom, I got really excited. I liked how they drew him. I like how they were writing him. And eventually, he takes off to start his kind of like, you could tell he's going to do something with his and a universe of his own. And in Ultimate Invasion, we're finally seeing that. Now there are bits of information that I didn't know that I'm finally glad that I gleaned because in Ultimate Invasion, when he escapes from damage control, I didn't understand how he got there. Um, and so once I did some research about how apparently there's a maker in like all the universes. I'm not going to get into again how that happened. He's like been splintered. It has things to do, I think, with some of the like higher cosmic beings, like the Living Tribunal, that kind of thing, like eternity and them. Um, and so now this version, there is a version of Maker in damage control who has been taken, prisoner. So the one that escaped, I think the one who escaped in Venom to go jump in his own universe, he might be this one. I am still not 100% because now with so many of them running around, it's, in the comics world, all they'd have to do is say, well, I'm actually this universe's Reed Richards, or this universe is, so and so and so and so. All of this is crazy comic book bullshit that we all just deal with and read, and if you can either handle it or you can't, right? Well, so in Ultimate Invasion, because we're all leading up to why there is an Ultimate Spider-Man, by the way, okay? But this wasn't just some like another Marvel event book, which is what I thought it was. And one of the main reasons why I didn't read it, because I was like, well, eventually I'll get around to picking up and reading it and seeing how, whatever happens. Because I figured it was like, okay, they're makers on the cover of issue 1. So by the end of this, they'll have stopped him and we're moving on with their lives. And because I wasn't following, comics future, like things that were coming in comics, I got left behind on this. It's why I ended up having to pay a little more than, 5, $6 for Ultimate Spider-Man #1. So in when Mager escapes damage control and what he gets done, we find out that he's created this universe where he's removed all of the superhero's origins. In order to create the world that he wants to control, he's gone through time and stopped people from being able to show up. And ones that he didn't remove, he found ways to control in this universe. And this universe doesn't have a Captain America. This universe is their Iron Man is actually Howard Stark. In this universe, we'll get to the Spider-Man stuff, but like, you know what I'm saying. But they get to how he did it. They get to the threats that he faces, and this really is like Maker's creation of this new Ultimate Universe that came, that kickstarts after Ultimate Invasion with Ultimate Universe #1. And then now with these other books, Ultimate, at least the first 3 anyway, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Black Panther, and Ultimate X-Men that are all coming out. Ultimate Black Panther, gone, can't find it anywhere. Probably going to have to pay the same kind of money for that as well. Thanks to everybody who can't just let other people have a book at cover price. Everything's apparently has to always go to the highest bidder. Anyway, that's another conversation. But all in all, again, he succeeds, and now we're going to find out like how the superheroes in this universe are going to get awakened by a Reed Richards variant with a Doctor Doom mask, who's basically Doom. They kind of just say that he's Doom. And after Howard Stark dies, which I gotta say, one of my favorite parts of Ultimate Invasion was Howard Stark's character and getting to see uh, what things in this universe would have been like if he was the one who rose to the level of Iron Man, and was kind of the big deal uh, back then when he got rid of Iron Man's, you know, origin. and using Howard Stark purposely because he thought he could control him. In the end, he couldn't, and Howard was a hero a bit in this universe. And in this, Tony Stark teams up with this Doctor Doom, Reed Richards, to fight Maker. And to they get the codex because okay, this is one of the only dumb things, right? Is like in all the really cool concepts and everything, sometimes it still comes down to oh, the bad guy still has all the heroes' information sitting around for somebody to find. So we've got our like MacGuffins for this series. Like just when you think it's like absolutely perfect or close to perfect or close to like one of these like really truly great stories, they throw something like that in. So, Tony Stark, who is now Iron Lad in this universe, which if you know if you're really deep into comics and not just as not casual, you would know that like Iron Lad is usually Nathaniel Richards, who is also Kang. So in this, it's Tony Stark who is Iron Lad, and I like that. At least this version. I think there's been more than one Iron Lad that was Tony Stark, but I'm not 100% on that. Like I said, I haven't been, I haven't read everything in the last 20 years. So forgive me for any of my little inaccuracies. Feel free to respectfully contradict or correct me on some of these things. Because otherwise I'll just get rid of it because I don't need that kind of negativity. I like constructive criticism, not just all out attacks. Anyway, so who does? Masochist. Um, all right. So Tony Stark is Iron Lad when it's usually a Nathaniel Richards, and they are the like resistance to starting all this, to fighting back uh, against this world, which we should also mention is controlled by who I think is this universe's Nick Fury. I think is actually Captain Britain, who loses an eye in an attack. And also I think let's see what oh, and like the new like Illuminati, which plays a kind of a part in the beginning of this story, where Maker steals some important stuff from. They have like this new council, which is like a controlled Hulk, Colossus and Ilyana and Omega Red are like the Russian front of this kind of thing. There's some Moon Knights like running around. It's an interesting world, and I'm really excited to see a part of it. But in this world's Spider-Man, who first appeared in Ultimate Invasion #1. So, like as cool as like having Ultimate Spider-Man #1 is and how like everybody's blowing up about it, right? And making it way more than the cost should be. His first appearance is Ultimate Invasion #1, and maybe that book will become hard to come by, but like seriously, folks, like Ultimate Spider-Man #1 is not the first appearance. So I don't know. Anyway, I digress. But there, okay, before we get to Ultimate Spider-Man #1, though, there is a couple of things I want to talk about from Ultimate Invasion that really stood out to me. And one is uh, first we'll talk about the disappointing thing that I think some people are talking about, and that's like how it wraps up before they um, get to the new Ultimate books. And it was at the end of Ultimate Universe #1. And as cool as a lot of it was, I felt like the Iron Man or Iron Lad, like where they made it look, they had a something go wrong with his suit, so that it like caused this huge explosion that kills like all these people, and it felt so much like what they did in Watchmen with the book at least, and if you want to count the movie, how they got them to like blame somebody for a terrorist attack. It felt like way too on the nose. That would be one criticism, but the non-criticism that comes into play here is what Hickman has to say about our society in this book. I'm a progressive person. I'm a humanist. I believe in us. I don't believe in a lot of these systems, and so like I believe in progress and moving forward, and I like that Hickman's thoughts in this book is a commentary on our society, talking about the powers that be and what's going on in our world. And at the end of this book, at the end of Ultimate Invasion, in the epilogue, he says something, and I just really wanted to read it because I agree with like what he's saying here. And they're talking about, and he says, the past. My dear, it's Howard Stark talking to Tony Stark, and I just really like this part. I'm just gonna say it right now. The past. My dearest Anthony, I am so tired of this world. I am so tired of the people in it, of what they accept, and of what they have become. But I know the fault was mine, maybe more than most because of my gifts and the means that came with them. I was so wrapped up in the good things I was doing, this work and the bounty that work provided us, that I didn't care enough to notice what was really going on in the world I was shaping. I know now that it is a false, fallen world that we point as good enough, but under its skin, we all know it's rotten to the core. And on reflection, almost all of the things I have made do nothing but support the systems that reduce men and women to pawns and playthings, to workers and consumers, to servants and slaves. All the things I have made are tainted with the patina of evil. All of them but one, and that is you. If this has found its way to you, then I am gone, and I have left you a world that is no place for the innocent. But only innocent eyes can see it for what it could be. Remember, Anthony, it's never too late to change the world around you. You just have to fight. And I really, really dug that because it says a lot about an honest look at our society, what it takes to change it, and that you need innocent eyes in this terrible system to see what's possible and how we need, how that can help us change things. And so with that, we get to Ultimate Spider-Man #1. We have the world set up. Ultimate, this version's Peter Parker. We saw in the book, the Ultimate Invasion series, that he was prevented from the spider biting him by Maker. And in this book, that I think is incredibly written and incredibly drawn and a great new origin story. And also, I feel like this whole thing is a great setup for a reboot for the MCU. And I'm wondering if partially one of the reasons why this was done in the first place wasn't because there's some kind of plans along the lines of a reboot that they want to get into people's heads. All right. So as we get into the discussion about Ultimate Spider-Man #1, the first thing I want to talk about, and I want to give credit to Organized Chaos, Bob from over there at that channel, and Actual Fandom and the initiative, Actual Fandom Initiative that's been going on YouTube, for finally taking a look at someone that I used to kind of admire and work with over at Thinking Critical, and finally talking about this guy's bad faith and kind of how another good channel kind of decided to go down that chud route. And actually, he's been doing that for a while. And I want to thank Organized Chaos for looking at this guy's take on Ultimate Spider-Man, because he brings up, he's like, this is actually, a discussion. He's actually discussing this book. Well, one of the things I like that they've noticed in watching his stuff is how he's very careful. He comes at it in bad faith and coming from somebody who worked with the guy, I know that this person understands comic books, and I know he understands story, and I know he understands good story and good character. And this guy is putting out a front for the base that he's built. And he's pretending that he doesn't understand exposition. He doesn't understand good exposition, first off. He doesn't understand like how origin stories work. It wouldn't have mattered what this book did. If this book had done action, like been an all action book, he'd have complained that there was no character. And if this in this book it was like pretty much all like character driven dialogue stuff. So in this, he's complaining about it being not an action book, and that it's like pretending that he doesn't understand what this book is about. It's an origin story. It's an origin story we didn't get when we were introduced to this Peter Parker in Ultimate Invasion #1. And if somebody's superhero origin story has been removed, then how do you make a story about him being Spider-Man if he isn't Spider-Man yet? This person understands that and ignores it because of some of the other things that are going on in this story and this series. But he hides it in bad faith. And they always when you know the history of the person and how they talk about things, you can just read through what they're actually saying, especially when you know that they understand things that they're pretending they don't understand. Or in one book, they understand it, and when they talk about another, they don't. Good story, good progression. This book, if Peter Parker is not Spider-Man, you're not going to have Spider-Man in it. And there's the argument was, well, what if he was telling the story, from the beginning, and there he is already Spider-Man, knowing what he's doing, and you know, then he just showing in this world his problems. It's like, but that's every other fucking Spider-Man book we already have. It's the people that complain about how they just basically are saying they want the status quo in every book, that it should always be for the remainder of time these characters kept in a fucking snow globe where they never explore anything ever, and we just have them constantly fighting the same characters and going through the same storylines over and over and over and over again. Except those same people will complain about those things because it just comes down to the fact that the book and this thing that comics that they love is progressing beyond them, like all things do, and they just can't deal with it, so they will find any reason to tear it down and complain about it. And sometimes a lot of these arguments are hidden in well-constructed reviews. You just have to understand where these people are coming from in bad faith. Sometimes, like in Wes's uh, uh, from Thinking Critical's ideas about these books, he used to do it by letting the people that was on his panels do it. But now he's finally been brave enough lately to just let it come out on his own, and he doesn't need any help anymore because just like a lot of these other chuds, they didn't want to wait and build their channels uh like in a more honest way. They just decided the best way to do it is like what everybody else is doing. I just want to make money to feed my family. That's the reason I'm lying and making bad faith takes and just straight up lying to you about what I think about this book. So anyway, to contradict that, and again, to point out that this person knows what good exposition, good writing, good character is, his review was almost perfect, except again, he was leaving out the fact that he pretends he doesn't understand these things. I do understand these things, and I know that at least Bob from Organized Chaos does too. So you get to Ultimate Spider-Man #1, which is amazingly written by Jonathan Hickman. I wasn't sure. Sometimes Hickman, for me personally, can really throw it over my head, and that's okay. It means I have to read it like slower, take it all in, really think about stuff. I like it when that happens. So in this universe, he's like 35, 36 years old, and he's just living his life, and they show it in detail. It's important to immerse ourselves in this Peter Parker's life in this way because this is his life. it's not suddenly gonna turn the page to Rhino running down the street, charging through a farmer's market or something. It is explaining this world that he lives in and showing the repercussions of when you remove somebody's history. What does the world look like? And what I really like for a change of pace for Peter Parker, which look, this first issue is probably going to be the like one bright shining moment in Peter's life because before he becomes a hero, he pretty much has a great life. He's with Mary Jane, which is again what a lot of people like. He's got kids. I like that we're going back to like a Peter Parker that could have jumped out of like the 90s stories, who was like, and I'd say in his mid 20s before they, continually just kind of de-aged them. I like that he's, not quite middle aged, but he's old enough to have, some kids that are old enough to, start thinking about their futures, like I like that they involve the terrorist storyline that kills Aunt May instead of, and Ben Parker is here. So without him being Spider-Man, Ben Parker hasn't died. Aunt May dies in a terrorist attack, the one that set off, them hating Tony Stark. And I like how they explore Ben Parker's as a character. Ultimate Fantasy, or no, Amazing Fantasy, a book from a year or two ago, brought Ben Parker back for that story, and they had some fun with it, and it was fun to see the character, and I loved talking about that they brought him back for like this kind of like Elseworld story. But in this, it's because it's Hickman, they give it a much like more like realistic and just I don't know. I liked it a lot. That's all I will say about it. I liked that J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle are big parts in this story. I really do. Um, I like that this is where Ben's life ended up in this. That you think at first that Jameson is mad at Peter Parker once again, yelling at him, and then you see him interact with Parker, and you realize he's just he's just going past him, and you can tell that they're friendly, and that it's like Ben Parker is like this, editor of the Daily Bugle, and Jameson and him are both working together, and they're all friends, and it's a breath of fresh air, to be honest with you, a lot of this story. And because we've seen, the Aunt May be the caretaker. And now in this universe, we get to see Ben be his version of somebody who will help guide Peter along. And will it still happen that way? Will something still happen to Ben Parker? Who knows? Something always happens to us, in our lives. Eventually, we all go away. How will Ben Parker go? Will he go in this storyline? I don't know. Like the relationship between him and Jonah that, like kind of reflects their more recent like relationship between Parker and Jonah, seeing as how, Jameson has known now for a few years about who Peter really is and how that changed their relationship. And in this, them just being kind of like him being like kind of a father figure to Peter as long with Ben is interesting, or at least maybe I'm reading too much into that. But if I feel just like a lot more warmth coming off of Jonah in this, and it's a nice change of pace. Um, but we go into there is more about this world that they bring up in here, and you can tell. But there's also some really like interesting takes of like Matt Murdock being a priest. Like, well, I mean, that's a it's a bit on the nose, but like, hey, he's Matt's always been kind of religious. He's blind. I would like to know like how did he go blind in this? And does he secretly have powers? Is he secretly being controlled? We don't know. Like there's so many great questions that get answered, that we have the potential to get answers for. The only part about that scares me is a lot of times we get all these like cool questions posed, and then when we do get the answer, we're just kind of like, oh, Uh, so there is some potential, depending on which way they go, whether or not you personally will like those choices. I think that it'll be 50-50, really. We also get the Kingpin in this, who is, I mean, I think he's dead. I think they killed him in this. They basically take over the Daily Bugle, saying that they don't like the direction of how they've been covering the terrorist attacks, and both Ben and Jameson quit to start their own thing. And then right after that, they Kingpin I is like presumably killed. I don't know. Maybe not. We'll see. I think he's probably alive. You know what? Maybe it was just a really extreme warning, but there's a Green Goblin in town. Now I mean, even money, it's Harry Osborn, because Norman and his mom and Norman and Emily Osborn are dead. Norman's talking at the funeral, and this was brought up. And look, if this actually is true, it's actually pretty stupid. But I think that watching Organized Chaos's coverage of Thinking Critical's video on Ultimate Spider-Man #1, he said that he thinks it's like J. Jonah Jameson is the Green Goblin. Which, look, I mean, that's a way to go. But I mean, it's Norman, right? I mean, some things never change. That's the that's part of it. Like, some things are kind of constants. I I don't think J. Jonah Jameson. I don't know. That was just, I don't even know where that idea came from, how that even makes sense. But not everything always makes sense. It could be a comic book, and they'd be like, "Yeah, Parker, I found some." I don't know. But for Peter, and people will say like, "Oh my God, why are they spending so much time on these other characters?" It's because you're building a world, and that's what happens, and you know that. This is how you do good storytelling. Good character work. It's a comic book. Just, oh my God. Anyway, before I go too far down that rabbit hole, you go, why isn't this about Peter? But it all is about Peter. Don't you understand? Because these people are the people that will be making decisions that will be affecting Peter's life and other people around him. And what they do matters. It all ripples out, dude. Sheesh. So, anyway, we get the whole thing where Peter has his heart to heart with Ben. He's told to just come right out and talk to him. Ben is straight up like, "Yeah, man, you just need to talk. Like, you need to get like this out in the open." And he tells him like, "There's this thing missing in my life. Like, I don't know what it is. Everything is great, but like I can't really explain it. But I just know that I've been right all along, and I don't know what to do." And he's like, talk about uh inaction is action. And he's like, "Well, that's a load of garbage." It's a load of garbage way of saying, don't spend your life waiting for something to happen, make it happen, which is very true. And to be honest, I was a little inspired when I read that, because he's like, then wake up. And I think a lot of us do need to be like Peter Parker right now. We feel like something's wrong, something's not right. There's so many of us that feel that way, that pit, that something's missing, that something's wrong. And he's like, "Okay, well, you can do all the procrastinating you want, but if you know something's wrong, then you do something about it. You wake up and you take care of it. If you want to fix something, that's what you do. You can't just sit around waiting for somebody to fix it for you, because again, folks, no one's coming to save any of us. We have to save ourselves. And if we can save ourselves, we can save each other, and then, you know, endless possibilities, folks." But Peter goes home and then talks to Mary Jane, and she's understanding. She's like, "You're a great dad, you're a great father, and if nothing's gonna change between us, then, you gotta do what you gotta do, babe." And yeah, he gets the thing from Tony Stark, and you could say, isn't that weird that he's taken, like, letting, this guy who probably might have had a hand in killing your aunt, you're listening to his advice? Well, when you're like Peter's feeling and you get this, and some freaking hologram tells you that, everything about your life is been manipulated and controlled, and this is the reason why you feel the way you feel, and if you want to be a part of this, you can. And he gets the spider bite, he gets the thing, and he remembers what Uncle Ben says, he remembers what MJ says, and then that last page after the spider bite, You see him full Batman the Animated Series. That's what this looks like, folks. It looks like Marco Cicchetto totally did an homage to Batman the Animated Series right here with this pose of Spider-Man. He becomes Spider-Man in that moment. This is an origin story. You could have gone around and shown him as friendly neighborhood Spider-Man with Marco Cicchetto's art all over it, but there's plenty of that to come. And I think that if you want to say anything, this number one was actually worth it. This number one was necessary. This number one gives us a Peter Parker that, in my opinion, I've been wanting, and I want to see what's going to happen in this universe. I think, to me, this is a more interesting Ultimates universe than the original was. I honestly believe that already. I kind of like this direction more. I think that the original Ultimates had some really great moments, and it is, to me, a little unfortunately that they based the MCU on it so much in the beginning. But Ultimate Spider-Man, I think, is a great jumping on point for anybody who is tired of the current Amazing Spider-Man and other Spider-Man books, because I was. Amazing Spider-Man is a book that I've been reading since I was like 16, and I finally stopped picking it up because I couldn't take it anymore. And then this comes out, and it's just a breath of fresh air. Whether or not how long it lasts and the repercussions, I don't know, but I'm going to enjoy it for as long as I can. And if you liked this video as much as I like this comic, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and all that jazz. Otherwise, have a great day, everybody. I hope you come back to the channel soon. I hope I come back to the channel soon to make something. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye. Maker out.